Hey, Bo and Luke Nation. This is your co-host, Bo Bravo, with the Bo and Luke Show. And I have my other co-host here with us today, and his name is...
Luke Carignan.
Yay.
Good afternoon. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. Hey, we have a very special guest with us today, and her name is Zara Northover. There, I think I got that right.
You got it right.
Listen, Zara is just an amazing individual. She's a Jamaican Olympic athlete, 2008 Summer Games. She's a graduate of Northeastern University. She's an elite mortgage banker. She's a model. She has her own website. She's a woman of faith. She's a brand ambassador with Athlete Foundry. She currently lives in Detroit, Motown. So we are just so blessed to have you on our podcast with us today, Zara. It's amazing to have you. I mean, we feel super lucky just to get you as a guest. So how are you doing today?
I am good. Good morning, everyone. In the midst of all this chaos that's happening in the world and across the nation, it still feels like a blessing to be invited to be a guest, on someone's podcast, or to position myself to be able to speak so others could potentially be inspired by something I say. So I am honored to be here today.
Well, thank you very much. So before we get into the nitty gritty, Luke and I were talking before we started the podcast. We're about, it feels like a very long time since we were all stuck at home on lockdown and working from home. So, we're men, you're a woman. How many outfits are you circulating every day? Because we feel like we got about 3 things and that's it, because every day is the same.
With all this, social media challenges and different things taking place, I'm not gonna lie, I probably get dressed up more than the average person at home right now. But that's just because I mentor a lot, and especially with college students and high school students, I want to meet them where they are. And right now, the place that they're tuning into are the TikToks and the Snapchats and the Instagrams. So I'm doing it for the gram. I'm doing it to connect with my mentees. So I'm smiling and dialing, and just having a good time in my home and taking advantage of the time that we have at home.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah, I'm the complete opposite of that. I think I've been making like a pair of jeans last 5 full business days right now.
Yeah, these are different times for sure. So Zara, tell us where you're from, where you grew up. Tell us a little bit about yourself before we start pinging you with questions.
All right. So I'm inexperienced, so I'm excited to have some fun with you guys today. I really believe that we are positioned on this earth to just have a good time. And I happen to be born in Florida. I was born in Florida on vacation.
Wow.
So my mother actually came up here on vacation when she was pregnant from Jamaica, and happened to have me. And, and now I'm a U.S. citizen and a Jamaican citizen, because as soon as vacation was over, we went right back home. So, I spent my first couple of years in Jamaica for my father. My late father, who's deceased, passed away in 2012. His name is Winston Northover, and my mom, Pearline Campbell. So now, I was born in Florida, lived in Jamaica. Then my mom decided to relocate to the United States when her and my father separated, and she ended up in New York as a live-in health aide, and that's where I lived. I grew up in Elmont, New York, went to high school at Sewanaka High School, went on to college at Northeastern University, where I got my first degree, and I have a master's from Eastern Michigan University. So kind of did the whole school thing, really contemplating the doctorate, but right now enjoying, working and having traveled the world, competed, because I think that sometimes we forget that when you're a professional athlete or an aspiring athlete, that you spend a lot of your time doing odd end jobs, traveling all over the place, wherever you need to be from a coach standpoint. And you have to have that flexibility to move. So, a lot of things kind of get put on hold when you're chasing that dream.
Yeah, for sure. And, to all our listeners, we've had current NFL player on the podcast, former NFL player, and now we have you, an Olympian, and you are an elite athlete yourself. And that is an amazing accomplishment. How did you get started What drew you to shot putting and throwing?
So it's quite funny. Actually, I hated the shot put. I didn't like it at first. Like I was a heavy girl. I was 230, very really strong, but super agile in high school. And football players used to all the time would be like, "Girl, you need to throw the shot put," and I'd be like, "I'm not doing that." That's not me. I play volleyball, basketball, and softball. Those are my three sports.
Yeah.
But I am a helper, and I can't shake that. By nature, I just love to help others. And a friend of mine was a shot putter, and she needed a partner for a shot put relay. So I was just
Wow.
like, you know what, I'll go ahead and do it. Like, what have I got to lose? And so on the spot, never did it before. I got in the circle, threw like 32 feet from like a power throw, and everybody was like, wait a second, you don't do this, you don't practice this. I threw further than any other girl in the competition that was training for it. So my coach at that point was just like, all right, your 11th grade year, you don't have a scholarship yet. This is what you're going to do. Like, this is what you're going to do. And I was just like, all right, like, let's do it. So I went for it. For the most part, I actually ran the 100-meter dash. I was a long jumper. I did all the other events. And then I still played softball. And
Uh-huh.
I helped her with the shot put whenever there were competitions, just so we could get points for the team. But every throw got further and further, and it eventually landed me a scholarship at Northeastern University, full scholarship.
Wow. That's incredible. Yeah.
I
Now,
love how you were. Well, I was gonna say, I love how that you were just like, oh yeah, whatever, I'll give it a try, and then got a scholarship and went to the Olympics. Like, come on.
yeah, Zara's a big deal. You were the first women's athlete to compete in the Summer Olympics out of Northeastern University. That is
Yeah,
that is
that's
a
a
huge
first.
accomplishment. Yeah, that's the university is going to hold on to that forever, right? That
Yeah,
that
so
you represented.
yeah, it was really it was cool to find it out. So like I won't say that I'm actually the most competitive person, but I am competitive against myself. Let's just put it that way. I'm not competitive against others. For me, it's really just all about beating my personal best. So whether it's meeting my personal best and coming in second or third, like I'm still like stoked and excited when I beat my personal best. So for me, I just wanted to go to Northeastern University. To be honest, it wasn't the greatest school when it comes to athletics, but I knew it had a cooperative education program. I still didn't really like the shot put anyway. So
Yeah.
I actually wrote them. I wrote them and I said, hey, I'm going to be really good. I'm going to be really good at the shot put. I just started. You guys should give me a full scholarship. That's literally what happened when my senior year, and the coach brought me in for a recruiting visit. I had already read through the NCAA manual, the questions that student athletes should be asked or could ask. Like, I probably was like a headache, honestly, for some of these coaches, because that's ideally what I wanted to do, is to work in sports. So
Uh-huh.
I just took all of this opportunity as my opportunity to navigate through that. So when I went on that visit to Northeastern, I was just like, well, technically we shouldn't be doing this. Like, I was that person, right? Like,
Yeah.
like that. I just called things out, knew what my rights were, asked for everything I was supposed to get. And but we had a good time. We really connected. Sherman Hart was a special coach there. I knew that the team wasn't that. I mean, I looked at the records and stuff, and I knew that I was going to be walking into a small pond and becoming a big fish. And that's what my mentor in high school had said. Zara, you have the skills to go to a big school or a small school or a middle school. And he was just like, wherever you go, you're going to do great. So go where you feel like, God forbid anything happened to you, you would still be happy. And I love the cooperative education program at Northeastern University, where you basically are working for 6 months and then you're in school for 6 months. You work for 6 months. So by the time you graduate, you have a 2-year resume. So
Yeah,
that's what drew me to that school. And I mean, I did my first year now. I'm coming in. You guys will love this. I come in and I'm just like, all right, I'm going to nationals. So coaches were like, "How about you throw 46 feet first?" Because I had only threw like 45 in high school. So I get in there, and I was just like, "No, I mean, if I'm going to be doing this, I'm going to be the best at this. So I'm going to nationals." Lo and behold, I actually trained my behind off and threw over 50 feet, and was the first freshman to make nationals in my first year. So
that
I
is
did.
fantastic. Yeah, what an accomplishment for sure. So
Thanks.
what about as a student athlete at Northeastern and you're on the track and field team, did you have a regiment that the school set that you had to follow, like when you were actually those 6 months that you're in school and you're training, um was there a regiment that the school set that you had to follow every day? A routine?
Yeah, so I am the dynamics on the Northeastern campus is a little different because right, it is a community school. A lot of people are work. It's transient, so it was you had to really hold yourself more accountable if you wanted to be good. So I quickly rose as a leader on our track and field team because I'm very driven in terms of what it is. I told you at the end of the day, it's just me and whatever my goals and personal bests are. That's what drives me forward. So when I got on the team, I remember being amongst all these new faces and I just wanted to get to know everyone. Plus, I came from an area that was predominantly white. So now going into, a university and being, more in a mixed, diverse environment on the track team, I was just excited to connect with people so when everyone was practicing, basically I was practicing. So that's why I think I became so good because I
Yeah.
was warming up with sprinters, and there wasn't a huge throws team, so I was practicing with the guys majority of the time. Derek Anderson actually is honestly like a big tribute as to why I was such a successful shot putter because I hate saying putting it out there, but the coach that was there wasn't necessarily the right fit for me. So I'll just put it that way. And what ended up happening was I did what I needed to do in order to make sure that I could elevate. So I dug up an old coach, a former alumni from the university, and connected with him. And it basically came down where all the throwers were just like, hey, we need something more because we know that we were destined for more. And, the head coach moved along with us and we were able to get Joe Donahue back on the team as a coach, and he led us because if not I was training 7 to 10 o'clock at night at the Reggie Lewis Center recording myself and then sending this man these videos because I knew that he knew it. He was a great coach and could give me the directions that I needed. So it was really a blessing to get him on the team and allowed me to have a little bit more time back because I was training nonstop when he wasn't there. So we had to figure it out because I wasn't in a position, right, where I had, the type of coaching I guess I would have hoped for going to probably potentially a bigger program. But we made it work. We made it
Yeah,
work.
that's awesome. Super awesome. I take from that, and I hope our listeners just heard that. One of our mission with our podcast is to help inspire people to be, know, and do better. And for everybody listening, Zara just gave an incredible example of self inspiration when you saw your surroundings and you said, well, this coach might not be the best fit for me, right? And you analyzed that yourself, and then you took action, right? You take action on that. So I think that helps. That applies to people in the workplace, whether wherever you are, if you're finding that your work's not the right fit for you or you're not the right fit for them, rather than mope around, it's about taking action and putting some plans together, make some goals, and figure out how to better your situation yourself. So I think that's amazing.
Thank you. And, I think it was really because I still have a relationship with that coach. No hard feelings. The
Sure.
coach is no longer with the school. And I think that, my high school teachers used to always say, I'm wise beyond my years, and I think that came from having an immigrant mother, a Jamaican mother, in the United States where she had a very heavy accent. So when I was younger, 12 years old, I remember when I first learned how to write a resume, helping my mom create a resume. I remember having to unfortunately be on the phone and call different places to rent because I don't have an accent. So, I know how to turn mine on, turn mine on. So, but I would call these places and she would tell me what to say because redlining, and I had to, that's why I think as a motivational speaker, I say that I am a voice, right, for those that don't have one. And that's the reason why I stand up. And I've learned early how to communicate with others.
Yeah, that's great.
Thanks.
So tell us a little bit, Zara, I guess about, well, first, before we jump into anything after this, tell me about Beijing. I'm dying to hear about Beijing.
So Beijing was amazing. So we actually went to Tianjin, China first, because I think what sometimes people don't realize is you're really gone for almost a month, 20 to 30 days is where is like the whole Olympic experience because they're sending out teams to the to training villages, right, to get acclimated to the weather or the time zones or whatever is going on, and you're training there as a team, and then you end up moving into the Olympic Village typically like a week before, 10 to, week 7 to 10 days before. So it was surreal. And the reason why it was so surreal is one, I was used to people wearing masks because people were definitely wearing masks around China on a regular, normally. But for me, it was a fight to get there. And I was still fighting when I was on the team. So I actually got contained by the Chinese when I first got to China, just because my name happened to not be on the roster or the list, like when I with the team. So it was like a crazy mishap. And being in my 20s and like already like super excited, but then confused because like I wasn't sure why I was being held back from doing certain things. But it was once again another experience where I had to learn how to communicate, express myself, and learn to be patient in order to figure the things out that needed to be fixed. Because clearly they were gonna, fix that situation. So when I got there, though, we, ate as a team. We had a Jamaican chef. We connected. So I was on the team with Usain Bolt and Shelly Ann Fraser and Aileen Bailey, 4-time Olympic gold medalist. So there was a lot of like connections in history because I still am an American girl on the I'm a Jamaican, right? Jamaican and American. so so I had to, get to know my teammates and stuff, and that was such a great time. But my favorite part, honestly, was the Olympic ceremony, right? Like the walking in, because the rest of the world is at war with one another. And here we have thousands of athletes that do the same thing across and around the nation that are just walking in this one venue. And it was amazing to know that millions were watching at that moment. And all the lights from people snapping, pictures. It was really just a moment that I replay on a regular basis because you just got chills and vibes as you walked in.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's got to be surreal.
So amazing.
It was. And we took lots of pictures, right? You don't understand anything, but you understand like picture.
Yeah, exactly.
We all connected that way.
Yep, I think that is fantastic. I've been, being able to go outside of the United States or go to other countries and just experience different locations, different cultures, different people. I've been blessed with that in my life and having a military background and being in the Middle East, being in Asia, being in Europe, being in multiple places. But in all, I've always felt like most people, the overwhelming majority of people, are very receptive and kind and like to share their cultures. And I've always found it to be great and amazing.
Absolutely.
So that's pretty cool.
Absolutely.
That's pretty cool.
I actually still stay in touch with Cinda, and she was our personal translator when we were in Jamaica, when we were at the Olympic Games in Beijing. So I still stay in touch with her, and we communicate on Facebook and stuff. And that's what it's all about, is just connecting. So I actually want to share this story because I think you'll find it funny. My mom did not have a ticket or anything. We didn't know I was going to make the team. So, like those things are usually last minute for a lot of families, right? So all of the hotels and everything was booked. So my mom bought a ticket anyway because she said, if my baby's going to China, then I'm going to China, right? So here I am emailing alumni, trying to figure out how I could get her a room. So it was when I got to the Olympics that first day, because I went 10 days ahead, there was our chef, and I asked our chef, I said, my mom has a plane ticket to come in here next week, and I don't have a place for her to stay. And she was like, oh, she could stay with me. So my mother
she roomed with the chef.
Yeah, and she rooms with the chef, and they've become really good friends too from this experience. So when I say that I am a top-notch communicator, I'm not afraid to ask anybody for anything, because the one thing I learned is that people can say no, and that's fine, right? But they may say yes. They may say yes, and that's all all I care about is that maybe.
That's right.
Yeah.
Did you ever have an opportunity while you were there? Was there any off time or personal time to do any local sightseeing or taking part in the
Yeah.
local community? Yeah.
Yeah, so I competed earlier, so that was fun to be because I competed earlier in the games. One, it allowed me to eat right after, because some people do make that mistakes, and when they're competing later in the games, and then you have literally vending machines of candy and Powerade and whatever it is that you want at your disposable all day, right?
Yeah.
So I competed early, so I went and got to see the Chinese markets. We went on a personal tour with our translator, and I mean, there were so many amazing things to see within just the actual communities, what they ate, how they moved. And we went to the Great Wall of China. So, I really was able to experience the nightlife, the local life, and indulge
Yeah.
in the community, and then got to actually enjoy watching Usain Bolt break the world record right in
Wow.
2008.
Yeah.
So to be able to enjoy the meet was just a blessing too.
Yeah. That's amazing. Good stuff.
Yeah, that was unbelievable. I remember that when he broke that record then. That was insane. Nobody had ever seen anything that fast before.
It was. I think I used to joke though, and I would tell them all the time. I'm like, Tyson Gay was faster though, because technically Tyson Gay ran whatever he ran in high school, so it was a further dip. So I was like, if you ran 20 and now you're just running, like I mean, like it wasn't that big of a move. So we would joke all the time. But if you actually watch his documentary, I'm in the documentary. He were a really close knit on that trip. So
Uh-huh.
when he broke it, there's in the video, it's like me running out and screaming and super excited. So it was really really a fun time.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
I have just a general question, and for listeners, you can't see Zara right now. We can see Zara, but she's just like she comes to life on Zoom as we're doing this right now. Are you passionate about absolutely everything you do in life? Because it seems like you are. I'm getting that flavor.
I am, and I know it's annoying to some people.
I'm loving it.
Yeah, me too. I don't know if you said it kind of in an undertone at the beginning, but folks, she's Zara, the experience Northover, right? So her life, she is how did you explain yourself? I'm an experience, right? Is that
I'm
what
an
you told us?
experience.
Yeah,
Yep, and
that's great,
it was
and
a
you live up
mentor.
to it.
Yeah, but a
Yeah,
mentor. That's how he said when he first met me. He said, "You are quite the experience," and I was like, "I like that."
yeah, that's how you get remembered, right? That's how people remember who you are. I think that's
Yeah,
fantastic.
and listeners, you need to just go find Zara on LinkedIn. Just Zara Northover on LinkedIn, and the sheet of experience that she has is insane. It's absolutely awesome to look at. Like I have it pulled up in front of me right now, and it's just one of the longest experience sheets that I've ever seen of awesome accomplishments. Like some people just have like, I went here, I went there. Every single description that she has is not only what she's done, but almost why she's passionate about it and then what she's accomplished while she's doing it. So I just wanted to call that out. It's amazing, Sarah.
Thank you, thank you. We got to live in the present moment, and when I lost my father early, and my father and I were really, really close. So I was training for the 2012 Olympic Games. That's what actually brought me to Michigan. And prior to Michigan, I was in Arizona when I made the 2008 Olympic Games. So it was a series of loss, right? My coach from Northeastern that I dug out of the grave, died from pancreatic cancer. He was battling with it at the time in 2008. So I moved to Arizona, not knowing where I was going to live or stay. I slept out of a car and with friends, with new team members, and made the team. And then that coach decided to move to the University of Michigan and take a job there. So he was moving. I was going to sell everything in that apartment and move also, because I knew if I was going to make the Olympic team, I got to go with my coach. So in coming here, same thing. I wrote Athletes in Action and asked these empty nesters, strangers, if I could stay with them, and they said yes. So I moved in for a couple of months until I was able to get myself situated. My first time seeing them was when I was at their doorstep, And but came here, substitute taught. You do odd end things to make whatever money you need to make in order to survive when you're not a sponsored athlete. And I wasn't sponsored by Nike or Adidas. So that's where my actual personal brand that you've seen, Moving in Faith a lot, Moving in Faith LLC, came about, because I literally was moving in faith. Like I
Yeah.
was certain of the uncertain. I had no idea where I was going half the time or what I was going to do, but I was certain it was going to help me get to the end goal because I needed to do it in order to get where I was going. So,
Yeah.
I ended up here in Michigan, 2012, and my coach finally passed away in October. So that was right dagger to the heart a little bit, but I was motivated. I said, you know what? This is what Coach would have wanted. I'm going to make it. And then unsuspectingly, my brother was shot and killed in January of 2012. And, like he was a brother that was very, like, rah, rah, always there and supportive. So, I went to the funeral and I was still motivated. I said, well, you know what? I guess I'm gearing up to have the best story in London, right? Like,
Yeah.
I lost my coach, I lost my brother. So I'm going to keep going. But I think the one that hit me most was I remember the day I was at Central Michigan University and I was there for a track meet. And I got the phone call that morning right before the meet saying, Zara, your father, passed away from heart failure. He didn't make it. And I remember being on the floor and just thinking, like, I don't get it. But the thing that got me up was saying, like, I know that he wouldn't want me to stay on this floor. Like, I got to go and compete. So no one knew. Like, I actually got in the circle. I competed. I won the meet. I think I might have broken a record at that meet. And then I broke down crying. And I remember the coach coming over to me and he was like, well, you okay? And he was just like, and I said, I lost my father this morning. And he was just like, my God.
Yeah.
Like, my God. Like, well, like, you got to go home. Like, what are you doing here? And, obviously he was in Jamaica and I'm here. So,
Yeah.
but I had this, I got to keep going. Like, right. Like, and my coach, Mohammed Satara, that was the name of my coaches at University of California now. He had said it. He said, Zara, no one is going to be upset with you right now if you decided to quit, right? If you decided to just stop, and no one's expecting anything of you. But in this time, if you decide that you're going to push forward, right, then you got to push forward with all you got, right? There's no excuses. There's no this. There's no that moving forward. And so what's your decision? And I made that decision because I was moving in faith. Like I was really determined to make the 2012 games. And I knew that, ultimately, if I just worked really hard, that this was this was part of the story. So I wasn't going to not be there. So I competed. I did what I needed to do. And when I threw 16.99 instead of 17.2 to make the team, it was like another death. It was another
Wow.
death. Like, I didn't make the standard. That's like, I won the meet. I was Jamaica's national champion, but I didn't hit the standard that year. So I wasn't able to get on the plane to go to London. And I remember being in Nebraska because I was driving all over the place to whatever track meets I could get into in order to try to make the mark. And when I was in that hotel room, I quit probably for about 2 hours. And then I quit for 2 hours after. And then I thought to myself, well, how else can I make this team? Like, what else can I do?
Uh-huh.
And I'm finishing up my master's in sports management at Eastern Michigan University. And I said, you know what? I'm going to write articles. I'm going to, like, this is what my internship will be. So I reached out to teamja.org and I actually wrote some of the most amazing articles that were featured at the Olympics on Navleen Williams, who was, she was a 400-meter medalist that was had overcome breast cancer, to get there. Like, there was a couple of there was a couple other, articles that I ended up working on that from medalists and stuff. And, even my brand Moving in Faith. So I wasn't in London, but it was amazing to get these notifications popping up. People were wearing Moving in Faith, shirts in front of the towers, right? People were wearing Moving in shirts at these track meets. People were wearing these bands on the team. And so I was just like, my God, like I'm not in London, but my brand is in London. And I'm writing these articles for these athletes in their voice, because we usually lose our voice when somebody else does our articles,
Yeah.
unfortunately. But
Yep.
I knew that I was in a position to literally capture the article the way they wanted, with their pictures, with their story. And so I was still there, I was still there.
Amazing. You are absolutely filled with just an enormous amount of personal courage. You're fearless, and you've just been doing that for, my God, what, decades now, like for a long time. And it's, you
Everyone
could
the other
just,
way.
Oh, it's so inspiring. I love it.
It's the attitude. How do you make, that's what it is. Like if I had to put my finger on it, it's your attitude. You have such a great attitude. That's, I think, just from speaking to you in just a short period of time, that's what's allowing you to do this over and over and over again. Where does that attitude come from, and how do you maintain it? Because it's not even like just having it one day. Like I said, listeners, look at her LinkedIn and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. She's repeated this attitude multiple times.
The thing that I have a very strong why, and with my dad, that's why I say doctorate, right? Like, like I will get my doctorate at some point because it was one of the things that my father had said. He was just like, well, I can't wait till you become Dr. Z. So, right. So, I mean, it's one of those things. I've hit the epitome of athletics, so I know that I will hit the epitome of academics as well, and so that's on the radar. But it's honoring his legacy, and I know that there are individuals that are with us for a short period of time that have impacted our lives, and that I am blessed to continue to be that gift and legacy carrier for those individuals that may have gone or still here. Like my mom is a big why for me. I want to position myself to be able to help her to do whatever it is that her heart desires, because she literally gave everything. Like, she worked 2-3 jobs to make sure that I could go to the sports camp. She was helping me fundraise. She was, like I was a child that did a lot. I was getting myself muddy because I'm, roughing it up with the guys playing soccer in the corner in elementary school. I was the girl that decided I want to run for president 6th grade to 12th grade and win, right? Like I was the girl that just did everything in the midst of also being a minority in a predominantly Caucasian neighborhood. So that in itself probably scared, the daylights out of her, because we weren't wealthy. We hardly had anything, but she would always just tell me that our skin color, right? Like what's beneath the skin is the same. So the story is, I remember I got in trouble because I have these scratch marks on my hand because I used to scratch myself to show people like, well, no, my blood is red. Like, so your blood is red. Like, we have the same blood. Like, like we're the same. But like I just a little darker, right? Like as a kid, I didn't know. Like I didn't know what I was doing. But that's what I was spreading, was just equality. So for me, that's why I try so hard to make myself the obvious choice, because in the world we live in today, we are always battling racism and equity and all those different inclusion and diversity. We're always having this conversation, and I just want to show people through example that anything you put your mind to, you can accomplish. Whether you're the first, second, third, then you have a responsibility then to help others to become the second, third, right? Or fourth, and to continue to pull one another up. So that's what keeps me going, is I just have it inside me that I'm here, I'm special, I'm here for a reason, and I got to do whatever it is I possibly can to make sure that people are encouraged and empowered to break down whatever mental barriers they have.
Right. Luke, would you say that out of the last 11 episodes of the Bo and Luke Show, everything we've talked about, if you could bottle all that up into one bottle, we have it. We found it. It's Zara, Zara Northover. So I really, and I don't say that lightly whatsoever, because we have talked to some amazing individuals and had great episodes talking about a lot of people growing up in adversity and making it to the top and really becoming very, very, very successful in life. Even an individual like Casey Chipwadia, who you work with Athlete Foundry, and his story and all the things he's doing to break down barriers for student athletes, break down inequality. But yeah, I mean, you bring all of that together, Zara, and you are really, you're the whole thing. You're the whole package. And so I hope people are really, really, really listening, even in all the fun and the laughing that we're having. If they could if you just home in on what Zara is saying, pause, hit the pause button, write the stuff down that she's talking about, and just take some of that in your own life, and you could really, really make some improvements and do better. It's phenomenal. It really is.
Thank you.
I'm blown away.
Thank you.
I'm blown away too. This is just incredible. And I want to know more about, I mentioned the attitude before. I want to know more about it because it's contagious. And we said on the last episode that you can control your attitude. And we were talking about how people have a choice to control it at any time. I feel like you might be the master of being able to control your attitude because you've overcome so many different things. And here you are today. I mean, I totally get the Zara experience, the experience Northover. Um, what advice would you give to listeners as to how they can control it?
So I have a therapist. So let's get real. Let's
get
go
real.
deep a little bit. Like I think that I joke around and say later in my career, I think that I hit a lot more of the adversity than earlier. Fortunately for me, but unfortunately for me. So being in your 30s now, dealing with corporate America, and we all know it could be a doggy dog world in corporate America. I mean, it took me 77 applications before I even got hired at Quicken Loans. I literally chased Dan Gilbert down on the street and this is a real story, chased Dan Gilbert down on the street, and said, hey, like, my name is Zara and I'm trying to get a job at your company. And I remember his words were, you are the exact energy that we need. Those were his exact words when he saw me. And then, things finally fell into place eventually and I got hired. But it's that persistence. Like that's what my attitude is. If I had to choose one word, I would say I'm persistent because you can't give up. Right. You know that eventually you're going to knock on a door and it's going to be a yes or it's going to open. Right. So why would you stop? Because if you stop, then you prevent yourself from getting to that yes. Mm-hmm. So the reason why I wanted to say let's get deep though is because I did hit a wall, on this corporate run. I came in to those walls saying, like, you know what, I'm going to be a President's Club mortgage banker, one of the best bankers you could possibly be in the shortest amount of time. And I worked, we're known for working a lot of hours. And I put those they called me in the room and told me, Zara, like, you need to stop working so much. Wow. But that I was just determined to get to the top that I could possibly get to. But when you start knocking these goals down so quickly, it's almost like that was my addiction. I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't do anything, and eventually it got to me. So I ended up on a medical leave for a couple of months because once you start achieving all these goals, then you're like, well, what's next? And then that rush of just I would start to help everyone else. That's when I started all these, it was like super mentor programs, right. And just wanting to give and burn that midnight oil because I didn't know any better. And, when I finally found the right therapist who used to play football at Guam Lee in Southfield, Michigan, I had to finally actually start to peel and unpeel the onion. Like, why am I working? Like, what am I hiding or what am I masking? And it was all that grief, right? Like, I lost my dad, I lost my brother, I lost my coach. And I just found the mechanism of work, and achieve in order to cover it up, to throw the Band-Aid on. Wow. So when I hit that dark space, it was because I was now finally left to feel my feelings instead of finding something else to mask it with. And so I can say in a positive light, the attitude to do work really is the goal of just achieving, right? But the attitude also can be a mechanism to cover up whatever it is that you're emotionally dealing with. And for me, it was that, like, I don't know what's next. And because I don't know what's next, then I'm going to find a goal to crush the goal. So that my focus can always be that goal. So it is a fine line of, now I take the time to be present, and to enjoy where I am, and to know that wherever I am, it's preparing me for whatever it is that I'm supposed to do next. But I have an assignment to the people that are around me, to the people that are listening, to Bowen, to Luke, right, to be present on this podcast and to answer questions and to smile and to be my authentic self. And it took me about 9 months of intense therapy to acknowledge that I had this issue. and now it's not an issue because now it is a who I am, right? Like, who I am is to work hard and to do well and all those things. But I also am aware that sometimes like I need to just relax. That's why I'm quarantined and chilling, right? Like, like I'm enjoying this time because, like I firmly believe as a woman of faith that God has given us a time right now for individuals to have exactly whatever it is that they need. Some people need to be taking this time to get their side hustles together or their business plans together. Some people need this time to spend time with their family, right?
Yep.
For themselves. And when you take the time to do that work and to get over the stigma of therapy and all those different types of things, then you tap into another emotional level that is just exciting. Like, it's exciting to hear you talk about me,
Yeah.
because at first I would be like, I would just kind of brush and keep the conversation going, but I really did do a lot, and I'm proud of the things that I've done. And I battled that confidence of even looking in the mirror. But when my coach died, before he died, the one in had pancreatic cancer, Joe Donahue, he would always say, Zara, I need you to look in the mirror and tell yourself you're great and you're going to do great things. So every morning I strive to wake up and when I get up, I look in the mirror and I say, I'm great and I'm going to do great things. And I have my mentees say this. I have anybody that I talk to say this, because every day we have an opportunity to choose greatness, right? Every day we have an opportunity. So I had a lot of influence of positive men in my life. My father was the same way, just he was a gung-ho, hardworking individual that accomplished a lot.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I thank you for sharing that, because I think even it's funny, I think God's timing is, well, number one, it's always the right timing, right? It's always the right timing. Both my wife and I today we've been in this house for a month, and we were walking around, and it just felt like we're both just moping around today, like almost like starting to feel depressed, right? But then to hear you, and I'm just literally just sitting here thinking, she's right. We are just look in the mirror and tell yourself you're great, because you are, and God has great plans for you. I think this is, we were talking about that as well. Luke and I have discussed it when we're not recording, about this almost being a time to reset. Like, we're being given a gift, and
absolutely,
and we should take it for what it's worth and actually use this time in a beneficial way.
Absolutely. And I think that it's leveling out the playing field. Think about it. Like, our younger generations are all used to internet, social media, virtual stuff. Like, I'm hearing all sorts of, people talk about like, yeah, we had a 25-person family meeting on, virtual on the computer. So now grandma doesn't know like how to turn it on, but somebody's showing her that, and she's seeing all these pieces and she's all excited. Like, I think that it just, now we're in that era where we're teaching the old or the young or the people that don't know how to, and we're connecting. And this is that space where it's allowing us to connect. Granted, it's under, unwarranted circumstances, and we are losing lives, I think I mentioned to you, Bo, like, I lost my brother earlier this week to COVID-19. He was 51 years old, survived, a wife and 5 kids.
Wow.
And it's tough to hear, like it's tough to hear. It's tough to understand, like, man, the fact that they're burning bodies, right? Like, we can't even honor them the way that we know to honor them, and that's being stripped away from us. And then I had to stop, and I was just like, well, why am I going down that dark hole? I can make a choice. And my choice is that his spirit lives on, right? Like, my choice is that I'm going to still do this podcast. My choice is, the worker in me has now learned that I'm not going to put myself right back at work. I'm actually going to take my bereavement to take this time, because I've learned, right, from my mistakes in the past to make myself better, to do better, right? Like, so this is where life is just full of choices, and we just have to continue to make the choice that we believe is best for us, and be present in that, and just know that we are moving in faith every step of the way. Faith is being certain of the uncertain, and no one knows what's going to happen next. We're COVID or non-COVID, anthrax or H1N1 or any of those diseases, right? All those things Heart attacks still exist. All these crazy things still exist, but so therefore you have to do the best that you can with the day, the 24 hours that you have.
That's right. Amen. I couldn't agree more. Yep, for sure. So let's Zara, we could keep you on this all night long and keep talking because that's just the flow. Let's transition. How did you meet Casey Chipwadia? How did you and Casey actually get together? How did you meet? How did you get convinced to be, or was it you convinced him to be part of Athlete Foundry, or he convinced you? How did that come down?
Yeah, so it's so funny, Luke. It's that LinkedIn. That
Ah,
LinkedIn is a whole lot of people sliding in the DMs,
That's right.
right?
gotcha.
So I think, I really put myself out there to just tell the story. This is what I do. Like, it's
Yeah.
not, it's, when you put yourself out there as to like, this is who I am. I do a lot of like motivational videos. I write poems. I do a lot of different things. And, Casey ended up approaching me, like sending a message in my inbox. And after reading it, I was just, before connecting with him, I remember thinking to myself, man, there was got to be more for student athletes. Like, I was an inquisitive student athlete, and in high school where I was, sending these packages with news articles and stuff like that to coaches. But not every athlete knows to do that,
Yeah.
So in my mind, I was already thinking it. So then I probably attracted it to me. So then when Casey contacted me about Athletes Foundry, I was like, this is perfect because I don't have to do the work, but I can still be a part of it, right? Like, like I'm not the one necessarily putting the years of research and putting together this amazing computer platform, but I wanted to be connected to something, and this I feel like is a new wave. I feel like it's a LinkedIn of athletics and education for student athletes, which is amazing.
Right.
And I said, hey, like I'm definitely on board. I sat through his onboarding with him, and I became the first female brand ambassador. Right, so there goes that first again,
Yeah.
because I think that it's just this is where I know that God has said like you're going to blaze trails, right? Like you're going to. I know that I don't even run from it anymore. Like, like I run towards it now to just position myself to do and to help and my mind is always going. So I'm always thinking of ideas. So I'm even always critiquing. Sometimes I have to remind myself this is not your business. Like this is not you don't
Yeah.
own the LLC. Like you don't need to try to fix anything. Be honest, Bo and Luke, like I'm worried about collegiate athletes right now. Like, like I'm worried that like if this was my senior year, can you imagine? Like, can you imagine if this is your senior year? Maybe you had a rough junior year and you were so looking forward to compete, to make it to nationals or any of those things, and now it's away from you. Like I know what that could do to so many people mentally because people normally do sports therapeutically as it is. And now that's stripped away. So I'm working with some friends with Feel the Real is
Yeah.
called to get ready to create a platform for student athletes where we're talking about therapy, we're talking about next steps. Like I want to reach out and get organizations and companies involved, to help to provide internships and but just create that space of hope, and that platform for us to connect and to communicate. Because once you have communication, then that's a barrier now that you're breaking. Because once you go into the solid space, that's where doubt starts to creep in, and you start creating these crazy stories. And I just don't want it to go so far left that I'm just like, okay, we have to do something ahead of time.
Yeah. That is amazing. So on the collegiate athlete side of things, we had I think you're right on track about being concerned about them as a whole. This is something that we talked with Jared Wilson. He's a current safety for the Jacksonville Jaguars, and we were talking about college. And he happens to be a Michigan Wolverine, so he graduated from University of Michigan. But we were asking him about the academics piece, right? And what
Mhm.
college athletes are getting or not getting. And Luke brought up stories about some of your more not elite, but your more popular, almost celebrity-like college athletes who, I think Luke, you said it was the Wall Street Journal you were reading in, and
Yep.
the young, well, who was the guy? Who was it was a quarter.
So it was Joe Burrow and Justin Fields. So the quarterback of LSU and then the quarterback of Ohio State as well.
Yeah, they never step foot on campus. They're never in a classroom. So it's all either online or separate because they're just too popular. They could,
Yeah.
professors would never be able to teach. So then the concern comes in. So even for the best of the best of the best college athletes that have a pro sport to go to, those pro careers, most of them for most players, they don't last more than, I mean, it's a few years, right? And then what? Right? What education do they have to back themselves up with? They weren't, they didn't do what you did and have already a 2-year work resume by the time they graduated from undergrad, and now they may not even have a, well, I don't want to say they don't have a real degree, but they don't have any specialized type of degree or education. So I think that's a real problem.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and talking to others that were professional athletes as well. I mean, I know that there's, a lot of them are struggling, right? Like, it's sometimes when I was in a position once, without saying names, right, where I called on a friend, and she was answering phones at a hotel, and I'm like, wait, you're a four-time Olympian. Like, what do you mean? Like, what's going on? Like, I was confused. But
Wow.
then, like, it made me then think, like, okay, well, let me help her get her resume together. Let me
Yeah.
help her do X, Y, and Z. Let me see if I can talk to someone in corporate and say, hey, there's an opportunity here, because I do think that there is a gap in between corporations understanding the value of of
Yeah.
student athletes, but past professional athletes, and what they can bring to the table. It's the
Sure.
same concept. Veterans, thank you for your service and everything that you do. But it's the same concept when an athlete takes, risk their life every day to compete, like to provide entertainment to the world. Like they're putting themselves to serve their nations as well. When we go to the
Right.
Olympics, I'm serving my country. So I often feel like there's also that responsibility of saying, like, what can we do? Because they're competitive, so they're going to learn.
Yeah.
That's the only why I was so successful, right? Because I was competitive. So, like, I was able to just shift. And I tell people I went from Olympic athlete to corporate athlete, right? Like, that's how I coined myself when I was in the walls of Quicken, or still am. And because I was able to make that mental shift, but I also wasn't, right, your
Yeah.
$50,000 a year Nike sponsored athlete, right? I wasn't, your $100 million contract. You know what I mean? Like, so therefore, if you don't have the right guidance through that times, that's why it's really important for professional athletes to have the right financial advisors and guidance and things like
Yeah.
that in order to get them through. But it's unfortunate that, many don't, but we're working on it. We're going to figure out ways to help, in those areas.
Well, that's awesome. I would love to talk to you more about that, because I think you're right. You're right on track. We've said it before on our show, and it's something that even in our work on the side where we have passion for, because I believe wholeheartedly that the analogy you just made between like the veteran and those types of intangible skills that don't necessarily have a direct application in corporate America, but between that type of person, the elite athletes, the college athletes, the pro athletes, everything that they have inside themselves that makes up their character, it seems to me like that is absolutely who every company should hire, right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely, right?
Absolutely.
They know how to achieve goal. Well, they know how to set goals. They know how to achieve goals. They know how to go way
Be
above
a
and
team
beyond.
player.
Be a team player, right? Be a leader. Be a follower. They know how to do all of that, right? So now all you really you got the easiest part left, which is teach them a skill that you need them to do, right?
Absolutely.
That's the
And I think
easiest part.
Absolutely. And I think once they understand, I mean, you could tell that the World Olympic Association or World Olympic Committee is starting to, because I don't know if you realize, like at the end of my name, I have that OLY. So it's the same as like a PhD, what do you call it? Because they want people to understand that, like, when you've made it to the Olympics, like that is an elite group. There's only less than 2 million people over time that have made the Olympics since it
Right.
started. And so I think that now the lesson is teaching that to corporations and their HR teams, and understanding what transferable skills can be drawn from, right? Because when I think of a quarterback, right? A quarterback or even a hockey player, like you have to read plays. Like you have to, there's these little circles and X's and O's. It's the same as like process engineering, like, right? Like, so I think there's things that could be correlated, but if you don't have someone trying to make those correlations, then it gets lost. And I think that we're in such a fast pace where companies are growing really big, really fast, that they're not thinking about those opportunities that are there for, right in front of them.
Yeah. Last fall, I was sitting in the barbershop and I was almost finished with the manuscript for my book. And I'm having a conversation with the barber, and he had a son who was a quarterback on a football team. And he's just telling me about his son, right? And he's talking about the story and the lesson. And I ended up actually writing it in the book because he brought out an amazing lesson in the value of a quarterback that's leading their team. And he's talking about, when the team loses and the quarterback's at the press conference and the press is grilling that person about, hey, how come your wide receiver didn't catch that ball, or your wide receivers seemed really off today. And the quarterback says, well, it was a great game. We didn't actually do everything that we were supposed to do. We'll get them better luck next time, type of thing. When it could have been that the wide receivers were running the wrong routes. They weren't paying attention. They weren't listening to the calls, right? And the quarterback could have thrown those wide receivers under the bus, right, to the press. But they don't do that because they're the leader of the team. They have their guys' backs, right? And that ended up in my book because I'm like, this guy is delivering like the best example of leadership and how you take care of your people, right? And you always, good times, bad times, you have their back. That is. Yeah, and they learned that in sports, right? And in their journey through athletics. I think that's invaluable, personally.
Absolutely. So it's just the transition. And, if you Google right now, you don't see too many. So, I don't know if I'm giving you guys to take the business idea because you don't see too many consulting firms, right? Like, kind of helping with those transitions out of profession. Because even if you're making $185,000 as a practice player, right? Practice squad NFL player or on a league NBA or whatever, like it's a lot of money, but it's not a lot of money when you're 30 years old doing this and now you've retired at 35, 32, and then what, right? And that's those are the conversations we're not talking about. And I've thought about the reasons why. Like, is it because, right, in the NFL, even in the NBA or MLB, if you have a plan A, if you have a plan B, right, you're not focused solely on your plan A. And that's what I was just like, is that why we do this? Right? Like, because we don't want people thinking about the exit because we want all in right now. But then now we've tunnel vision ourselves to the point where then we're like, oh, what? And you don't have time then to transition out because it's just a dark spot. So then that's where you have those athletes that should retire that keep trying, right? Like you keep trying to then go back because you don't know anything else. You don't want to start off maybe making $20,000 because you don't have skills and you're at the bottom of the totem pole. You didn't, so you didn't invest properly. Like, there was a football player I was talking to. He was saying like, man, I wish I would have known that I should have bought up properties in 2008, right? Like, like when we had the recession, right? Like there's a lot of things right now that people could be creating jobs, doing things, preparing to do, but not getting that maybe from their managers. Because if you have a plan B, you're 1 foot out, but they need you to focus on, right, the next tackle or the next point, the next 3-point shot.
That's a great point.
And there's so much that goes into it too, because that's a great point. Like, oh, I wish I would have bought up property in 2008. Well, guess what? I wish I would have bought a bunch of property in 2008, but there's a problem. I was broke and waiting tables in 2008. I couldn't buy any property. So there's a whole bunch of steps that go into that, like into creating your own luck per se, right? Because you couldn't just go and buy a bunch of properties in 2008. You had to start almost 5 years, maybe a decade earlier, and do the hard work to actually be in a position to even capitalize on an opportunity like that, which, I think a lot of people don't think about. And then when the timing, without that work done on the back end, and what goes leading up to it, when that opportunity does present itself, unfortunately, they're just not in a position to take advantage of it. And I think what you're saying speaks to that very clearly of, hey, there's a lot of things that you need to be doing even if you don't call it a plan B. Maybe it's creating a separate path for yourself so that when opportunity knocks, it's at least a door that you can open.
Absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely. Like I admire, because, obviously I was I'm friends with Bolt, but even at 16, when he broke the world record, the junior record, I mean, he took his money and he was bought an apartment complex, right? And had people, and he's a child, like, right? And now he has his restaurant in Jamaica, and now he's a part of like all these branding things. So of course he has great management around him, but it also speaks to who he is as a person, and I think of all those articles that came out about football players that were still getting their medical degrees, that were still, leaving to go to become a doctor, right? I admire that so much because, I think we're starting to get it more that like sports isn't forever, but it doesn't mean that we're going to not give it our all. Absolutely not. We're going to, like anybody that decides that they're going to set on the foot on the field is because they have a passion and a desire to compete. And that's not going to change even if you have this other path. Right. I think, Russell Wilson does a great job of I think, showing that, him and Sierra have this amazing relationship and, they have fun with their children and their family. There's balance. They're out here getting baseball teams. I think they're getting ready to start their own baseball team, so when I look at that, it's like you can have an empire and he's still an amazing quarterback. Right. He's still doing well. I mean, other people might now blame his a couple games he's lost on the fact that maybe he's doing all these other things.
Yeah, exactly.
But people are always going to have something to blame something on,
That's right. There's always something.
He's winning at life. That's what counts.
That's what counts. That's right.
Look at Tom Brady.
Yeah, that is something else there.
Yeah. He looks so weird in a Buccaneers jersey.
Yeah, something's wrong in the world for that to happen. But hey, we'll see how this fall goes.
Yeah. I haven't really heard. I just asked a friend that is, a therapist for one of the baseball players in the Houston team. But he, I was like, well, what's going on with baseball? Like, right? Like, is baseball going to continue? And I know, like, right now there's so many new norms to come our way. Right, like they may try to do something. I've been saying for the longest, like esports are huge. Like, right, like so I'm actually surprised there's not some form of esport Olympics that was going to just take the place of like the actual Olympics, like taking place, or that we didn't find now fun, innovative ways to get athletes and players kind of connected through gaming, but this is just where I think, like you said, it's a reset in this time, and it's challenging us to find ways to connect the different worlds, because I think what do they say, if you were a baby boomer or something, like you would have lived through so many different decades, like in eras. And I think it's an opportune time where there's so much to learn, because there's still so much from the gaming world, and where the people were lost because they're so used to the technology that they don't know how to communicate and be with other people, and that's needed. So I'm excited to see what transpires out of, this quarantine time.
Yeah, for sure. So before we let you go, real quick, you live in Detroit. How is Detroit coming along? Is it reviving?
I love Detroit. So I am a diehard. I was just, I'm working on, elaborating on my website and stuff. And I walk around normally with this Detroit necklace that I don't have on now. But one of the reasons what brought me here is because when I think of Detroit, I think of broken glass pieces, right? Because for me, I saw Detroit as, right, with broken glasses become a masterpiece when you start putting these things together. And so when you look at all the blight, when you look at all the different things that have been around, Detroit wasn't Detroit because of the city and the stuff, right? Detroit is Detroit because of the people, and the people are so resilient and they're so vibrant. And I think that's why I fell in love with this area, because I feel that I'm always about the underdog. And right, so at one point in time, it was considered the Paris of the United States, and it's going to be that again. You still have these beautiful big city feel of buildings, you just don't have a ton of people yet. But that's the key word, is yet, but I think that Detroit needs to put itself on the map. You have a lot of individuals that are are doing a great job, like I think attracting more people to come to the city, but I do see a future Olympic Games. Like I'm that thinker, right? Like I was actually working on my thesis because I see a future Olympic Games in like, let's say 2038, like, right here in the city of Detroit, because I just, the potential is here, and it's such a great city, like with great people, great restaurants, great culture and history. I watched a movie called The Clark Sisters that came out on Lifetime this weekend, and it just shows how multifaceted and ahead of time that they were in the car industry, in the music industry, and it's unmatched. It's really unmatched. And I've traveled the world. I've been to India, places that I didn't even know existed, and I just feel at home here. So I'm excited to see where it grows, and I'm excited to be a part of that.
I will say that I think Detroit has the best airport in the United States as well.
It's beautiful. Real smooth to go through. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I feel like if you fly from Atlanta to Detroit, it's almost like it feels like you went like 50 years into the future when you get off the plane in Detroit.
In Detroit. Yeah. I agree with that.
Yeah. You know what I'm actually excited about? So hopefully one of these listeners are looking for an investment opportunity. But like, I really, because have you been to sporting event at like Little Caesars or anything downtown yet in downtown Detroit?
Yeah. I was at a Tigers game a couple of years ago.
Awesome. And Tigers is right next to Ford Field, and Ford Field now the Tigers, the Lions, right, the Red Wings and the Pistons all play downtown. Mm-hmm. And I keep telling somebody, I'm like, who's going to create like an indoor track arena, right? Like, because how amazing would it be to literally have every single major sports in like soccer, basketball, football, everything all within a mile. Like there's not many, awesome. I don't think there's any city actually that has all those facilities and could attract world national competitions all in the same area. And that's why I say like Detroit has so much potential. It's really like a blank canvas, and it's just waiting for the right people to come back and invest in the city.
I'm a native Michigander, and when I was a young, early 20s after undergrad and living in Ypsilanti, and the Pistons were playing in Pontiac at the Silverdome, and the company I was working for had the owner had season tickets. So we were, that was back when Dennis Rodman was playing for the Pistons. And
oh, wow.
I
dated yourself.
Yeah, I did. I just always remember driving to Pontiac. I'm like, why am I going to Pontiac to see the Detroit Pistons? Right. It just almost didn't make sense. So it's great to see all of that moving back, or having moved back to the city itself. So I really like
that. Absolutely. It just comes alive. It comes alive, especially when they're all out and playing and the concerts. And I live downtown too. Like I live close to Eastern Market, which is one of the world's largest, farmers markets. And so it's exciting to be a part of the city when it's alive. So right now it feels, even in the moment where we're quarantined and there's hardly anybody on the street, it still feels, you feel alive here because of the big buildings and the statues and the lights. And, and we're right across the street. We're right across the river from Canada, from Windsor, Canada.
Right.
Like I put in Target in my phone and it takes me to Canada. Right.
Yeah. Yep. That's great. Love it. Well, listen, Luke, you have any follow-up questions for Zara before we let her go?
I don't. This has been, I see why they call you Zara the Experienced Northover.
Yeah.
I get it. I get it now. And I'm a huge fan.
Thanks.
Yes. And we could talk to you forever. You are absolutely 100% always welcome on the Bo and Luke show. Yeah. We've had a couple guests back a couple times and just to contribute. So you never know. We might call you back and say, hey, we got a great topic. You want to join us?
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. So thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you guys for having me.
Yep.
Of course.
Bo and Luke Nation at zaranorthover.com. If you want to check out her website, I think it's new, right? Or
we have a landing page there right now. Yeah.
It's sharp. It looks really sharp. I like it.
Thank you.
So Luke, I think that's a wrap.
Is that a wrap?
I think so. Good
it's
stuff.
A wrap. Want to say that's a wrap, Zara?
It's a wrap. We're out. Do better.
We're out.
That's a wrap.